Hello. Let's start. If you sit in the back and have any problems seeing my slides, because there will be some code examples, you can just open the presentation or on your mobile phone or a laptop, and you can just follow that. So I will give you like 10 seconds to just copy that or make a photo. Just in case, I usually have up to 6 lines of code, so it should be fine. But in any case, the slides are here. Couple disclaimers. Don't do that at home. There are more problems related to RubyGems, but I won't be talking about all of them, only a couple. If you're interested, you can find me on every single after party and party. There will be. And some of the tools that I will be showing are indeed open source because I haven't had time to make them decent. And if I would open them, you would say that I'm a crappy programmer. But I will release them in a month or 2 max. A bit about me. My name is Maciej Mensfeld, and I'm just a programmer. I did some open source. You can find my code in Karavka, in dry components, in RubyKafka and a couple others. I tend to find weird bugs in Ruby from time to time as well. And I'm programming my whole commercial life with Ruby. I work in Castle. Castle is a company that provides end-to-end solutions to account takeover attacks, which, long story short, security. That's why I take a bit of my work time to focus on security aspects of developing software with Ruby. I'm also an organizer of Krakow Ruby user group, one of the biggest Ruby groups in Europe. And this year we're organizing a small conference called krk.rb in Krakow as well. If by any chance you're in Poland, come visit us. It's been a long road. It took me almost 10,000 kilometers to get here. But it was fun. 20 hours to get to Tokyo, a lot of beers, a bit of jet lag. But it's still super fun always to visit Japan. It's my 2nd time speaking at RubyKaigi. It's my 4th time in Japan. I've been training martial arts for a while. And I love Full Metal Alchemist, both manga and anime. If you have any questions or if you just want to send me a message, you can find me on Twitter. Here's my email. I have a blog and I write a bit of stuff about Ruby there as well. I'm definitely not a person that has overall knowledge about security. My area of expertise, I would say, is a bit of RubyGems, and that's all. So if you have really complex security-related, low-level Linux stuff, I will probably say, I don't know. And yeah, if you don't know what to talk with me about during the party, whatever is fine. So let's get started. I hope to leave you with a bit of knowledge on how problematic RubyGems can be and what to do to actually countermeasure some of the threats that are related with working with gems, and how you can approach if you decide to be to go to the dark side, how you can approach RubyGems to get some benefits out of it. But please don't do that. I think the guys have enough problems without that. I will briefly tell you what RubyGems are because you probably know that, I hope. I'll tell you a bit about risks, attacks, and countermeasures to tackle them. So just for the record, RubyGems is a NPM for Ruby. I shouldn't say that way, but bundle install. Technically, bundler is in the RubyGems, but yeah. It was started 15 years ago by Chad Fowler and Richard Kilmer, and it's still there up and running, and it's good, and it's open source, and there are 160,000 gems published by 130,000 users with 33 billion downloads overall, which makes it 71 downloads per second. which makes it enough to do some cool stuff with it, or at least try. And usually Ruby gems come with bundler. They aren't the same. They're independent projects. Keep that in mind, because some people might be offended. Some that even sit here. So don't mix them up. But you know, they go together. I don't know if you recall times where you would have to install things manually with Rails 1 or things like that. It was a big problem. The session is recorded, so I won't use harder words. But Ruby gems aren't that nice, actually. They come with certain risks. And I will skip the part about making users install the gem. I'll get to that later. So now we'll have to stick with the fact that, with an assumption that someone decides to install our gem, just for the sake of simplicity. So yeah, we have a user, and he decided to install our super library. The question is, what does it mean? And majority of people will say that it actually means nothing. It was just downloaded, unpacked, and yeah, it's ready to go. But is that true? We can play with it a bit. And again, please don't do that at home. And any gems that I will present, because I did put them on Ruby gems, please don't install them yourself. They aren't that bad, because they don't steal credentials or SSH keys, but they still just do bad stuff. Trying to aggregate anything from an end user laptop is pretty easy with Ruby. As long as you can run Ruby, you can just cut, list the directory, get everything, even provide some like debugging for yourself if something went wrong. You can just catch any errors, so your shady gem can get better with a feedback. But in a pretty typical use case, you should end up just getting all of the things you're interested in an RI. And once that's done, the only thing you need to do is to just dispatch that. That's a typo domain. That's my domain, so don't worry. Pretty standard stuff. No external libraries related, a bit of Ruby, you know, usual things. So we end up with a question. Can we execute Ruby gem without actually running anything? Because, you know, if someone has a library and he has to run the code, it is kind of too late. I mean, you know, it's not that funny. It's way more interesting if we would be able to just run all of that just by forcing someone to install the library. So the first thing you can try to do is using the post-install hooks. They're documented, so no problem there. But they don't work. They work if you use bundler and set up things directly from Git, any Git, not only GitHub. But they don't work from Ruby gems. And it's really good. You're supposed to use, if you want to give a message to the end user using the install time, you can use the post-install message, which is supposed to be string, and it is serialized. And we checked it with Gobi after drinking coffee in Tokyo. So it is supposed not to be dangerous. So yeah, thumbs up for bundler for that, and for Ruby gems for actually disallowing that for majority of cases. For GitHub is actually really useful. I use it a bit to provide like certain features for private libraries that we use that have to integrate with other systems, but in general, it's not recommended to do that. And it's one of the reasons you should not use gems that are on GitHub directly, because any change can impact you. Empty file, so sorry. Yeah, but there is a trick you can use to run any code you want during the installation and hide it, so no one will notice anything. And it's taking the advantage of the extensions API that is used to compile native extensions. So what you can do, you can actually define a file that is supposed to prepare a makefile to build up a native extensions, but it is know-how limited. It's not limited in any way. So what you can actually do, you can just inject your code and generate an empty dummy makefile that will tell the end user that everything went fine. So you can just simulate. It takes up to half a second to send all of that to a server. So in order to simulate that, you can just make RubyGem feel like it would be compiled, so no one would notice anything. And that link is probably bad, but anyhow, I'll put all of the code and POCs on the internet. So here's a demo how it works, as long as I have internet. So I have a simple script that is only removing the vendor to force reinstall of the gem that I already pushed to RubyGems. My gem file is super simple. Please don't install that. And what it does, it sends the home directory list of the files to my server. So just to prove it, it's an empty screen. Let's wait for half a second or even a bit more because of the internet here. And I don't have internet. OK, so let's wait. Let's give it a while. Meanwhile, we can just go further. This is how it ends up. I was prepared for not having internet. So yeah, as you can see, it's being installed. It's installing my native extension. Please wait. And it's done, right? And what happens, all of the list of the files that I have on my local machine are already in the internet. So I wanted to make sure that it works actually not only for me. And what I did, I just asked some people to install that. Some of my friends, hey, could you check out whether my gem installs because it has a native extension? And everyone was like, yeah, why not? It's not a problem. Nothing will happen. Do I have to run it? Like, no, you don't have to include it anywhere. Just put it in bundler, run it, and then remove it. Nothing bad will happen. So the truth is that installing a gem is more than enough. But let's say that we don't want to steal SSH keys. We want to have a botnet. And super scary thing is that you've probably seen a certain version of this code in Bootstrap SaaS. I've made a CFP for this conference 5 or 6 months ago. I had a code examples many months ago before the attack that happened with Bootstrap SaaS. And they used exactly the same method. So what this is doing is actually monkey patching rack attack, looking for a certain cookie and running whatever there is. I won't do a demo because the internet is not too good. But what you can do, you can send any commands with a browser, and they are executed. And you can do really sophisticated stuff. I mean, you can build up a thread in a Puma that will send all of the requests, all of the incoming request data. You can buffer that. You can flash it in a background thread. You can hide all of the exceptions. And if you're smart enough, no one will notice. And this is how it operates. You'll be able to play with it. And the nicest thing for me is that you can use that to infect other gems while cleaning up your own. Because some people do inspect the gems locally when they install them, or they put a debugger there, things like that. And it's that simple. So what it does, it actually looks for other gems. It places the botnet code in other gems. And with 2 more lines, you could make your Ruby gem remove the file at the end. So if someone inspects install the gem, your code is fine. Other gems are infected, but you're, well, super protected, right? Nothing bad there. So possibilities are endless because we can do whatever we want. So, and it's not a theoretical problem because it happened with Bootstrap SaaS a couple weeks ago, exactly that case. And I was like, wow, that's great. I will have something to talk about during RubyKaigi. I wasn't happy about people that got hit by that, but yeah. But they did one mistake. One mistake they wouldn't. And that's why they got exposed. But I'll get to that. So to sum up this example, you get an unlimited power. You can do whatever you want. And that is really bad. But one does not simply install a gem, right? You need to be either a decent guy that has some libraries, or you need to be a core member of something to have a release permissions. And actually, it's getting better because RubyGems introduced 2FA. But in my opinion, it's still not enough. Because you can do certain tricks. So what you can do, you can use typo squatting and bit squatting to target RubyGems. And for those who don't know, bit squatting is a form of cyber squatting which relies on mistakes. So people quite often make typos. And the good thing is that on RubyGems, there is a gem to generate typo squattings for gems. So we can make gems on RubyGems that are typo squatted versions of other gems. So if you want to try it out, this is how it works. And there are a couple that are already there. And by number of downloads, you can see that, that people make mistakes. And it's not funny. And generating gems like that is easy. You can automate that. RubyGems does not prevent you from registering the gems with different names. And what was super surprising for me is that till a certain point of time, RubyGems actually allowed you to have different gems with the same name, but with different letter size. So you could have a gem called Rails with capital letters, and a different gem called Rails with small letters. They changed it at some point, but there are still many gems that exist with both names. And you can always book a name, and if it's not bad, it will stay there. And I saw it on GitHub. There was like issue, could you please remove bundler from the gems? And the answer was like, there is no malicious code there, so why would we remove that? And for me, that's scary, because it means that I can farm every single gem, bit-squatted and typo-squatted names. And I did, for a couple. Just as a proof of concept, because it's super easy, and you could have a big loop to bit-squat. I could technically book all of the names for the security reasons, but I don't feel that's proper. And one of the different approaches to that is bit squatting. It assumes that sometimes bit flips in memory, and with enough numbers of requests that are being performed to certain domains, it can actually happen. So what I did, I bought some domains. That a bit shift. That's why I had the SubiGems domain and many others. I think I bought them like 2 weeks ago, just to make a proof of concept. And I set up I bought more later. I just had a slide, so I didn't change them. But good for us, there weren't any bit-squatted requests sent by bundler. There were many requests from mobile phones and other things like that. Some of them were like web crawlers. But the question remains, can stuff like that happen? I think yes, but I think it's also not as often, and so we don't have to worry about that much. But the thing that we need to really worry is malicious takeover. And it comes down to social engineering rather than attacking RubyGems as a platform. And it's super easy. And not only that, Ruby provides you with so many tools to do that, that it's actually fun. As I said, there are a lot of RubyGems with many versions, and there are over 5K gems with 100,000 downloads and almost 2K gems with 1 million downloads. And you can use RubyGems database to figure out that from those that are popular, at least 3.5K of them weren't updated for a year, so you can easily pinpoint gems that seem not to be maintained, which means that you can use things like Robocop and all the other tools to fix some of the non-existing issues, and then people that no longer use Ruby or no longer are interested in the library will give you the access. this is what I did. I didn't attack anyone, but this is what happened to me a couple of times when I decided to work with a library. I did some basic cleanup, I understood how it operates, and then people usually give me the access to the pushing because they were too busy with their lives. So I did pinpoint some of the libraries like that with at least 100,000 downloads. I've checked their GitHub pages, and yeah, they are unmaintained. So I could easily do that. Run all of the tools that you can run just to present yourself as a really decent open source person with a minimal effort, because why would you put any effort in that? And this is what happened with NPM event stream a couple months ago. Someone just put a Bitcoin mining tool into NPM. First fixing a couple issues, getting the permissions because the previous owner wasn't interested in maintaining the library, and boom, problem solved. And when you get release permissions, please put something on GitHub, because the only reason why Bootstrap SAS was detected is that there were no references to the reason why the gem version was yanked. There were no changes in GitHub. So someone that checked it out started digging around. If there would be a justification, oh, sorry, I made it by mistake. I did some gem bumps. I did some cleanup. That's why I've just released a new version. And if there would be actually code on GitHub, I'm almost sure no one would check the Ruby gem sources, and no one would compare them with previous sources because it's a mendokusune in Japanese, which means a problem to do that. But actually, what is really important is to remember that there is no relationship in between GitHub and Ruby gems. It is just a coincidence that people keep code on Ruby gems on GitHub, and it doesn't mean they have to put the same code in Ruby gems. So I can have a GitHub version of my open source libraries that are completely different from what I push to Ruby gems. But there are some ways to countermeasure that, and I still have 8 minutes, or even a bit more. You don't have to use a computer. And I think some of the Japanese people know this guy. He's the Japanese Minister of Cybersecurity that admitted that he doesn't use a computer. So you can do that. Recently, he also admitted that he does not know anything about cybersecurity, and he just replies to messages. And I think he got fired. You can implement everything yourself because, it's unsafe to use Ruby gems, so try that out. There is no general solution to all of the problems. Also because Ruby is really dynamic, so monkey patching, being able to change so many things in runtime, being able to really hide many things. But there are solutions to certain problems and things you can do to actually make sure that stuff like that won't happen. And I know that some of the problems aren't that heavy for a small organization, but if you have a lot of junior people, interns, and they operate within a company, they aren't as detailed in their work as senior programmers. So with typo squatting, you can use Needleman-Wunsch and Levenstein algorithms with QWERTY maps for keyword scorings that will tell you whether something is a typo or not. And I did that, and I ran it over Ruby gems. And I compared all of them. And the problem is that there are too many gems that are similar, which means that I had a lot of false positives. One of them would be bundler, but majority of them would be similar gems or gems that are partially from the same family, like RSpec family or Rails family or whatever. They were valid. So I had to be a bit more clever. We have a Ruby gems database that is open, so we can easily figure out that popular gems aren't typo squats because they are there. They have hundreds of millions of downloads. We can always check dependencies. It won't prevent us from installing the gem, but we can figure out that, okay, this gem is supposed to be an RSpec, but it's actually not able to do anything because it does not include RSpec support, right? So it's like, it seems to be fake. You can check the popularity difference, disperse in between them. So if you have a gem like RSpec that is super popular, and then there is a candidate for a typo squatting that is as popular as RSpec, then probably it's not a typo squat. But if it has like 100 times less downloads, it's worth pointing that out. And you can check like dependencies of dependencies in case someone wants to hide something nested. And it actually works. So in the end, you can get a notification that something is not right. And it works for bit squatting and typo squatting. You can keep track of abandoned gems. And we do that. We keep track of all of the gems that we use to pinpoint gems that aren't maintained, or they seem not to be maintained because they weren't updated for so many years. We not only have an info that, OK, someone might try to take it over, but we also know that we probably should move away from those gems because the owner no longer exists or things like that. And this is like, yeah, with exactly this library, you go to the website and boom. So now you can send an email to this owner of this library that you want to take it over, you know. But the biggest problem is the malicious takeovers, or someone becoming evil and releasing a new version of a gem. And the truth is that we should prevent installing gems that without checking them. And you can do that by implementing a bumping policy. And this is what usually people do. They either remove the gem file lock and bundle, or they try to pinpoint and update one after another. But the problem is that any of those solutions will also install a gem. So you're not supposed to do that. But so what can you do? You probably shouldn't use automatic bump dependency applications because they bump things, they make pull requests. Pull requests get executed on your CI to run specs and things like that. And then what happens? The gems are installed. And people have a single CI flow with AWS keys, with Docker push keys, because they build images with the same pipeline. And then I have it all. So you can just, you know, convert it into a string and send to my super domain. So you need to review the gems, but you can't do that on GitHub. Because you need to do that on RubyGems, and RubyGems does not provide you with means to do that. And GitHub is not a proper place to do that, but I did a tool, and it's free, and it's going to be open source today or tomorrow. And it works super easy. You provide a gem name, you provide versions, and I will calculate from based on the RubyGems gems the exact difference code that you need to review. So you can immediately see that something is not right. It will be public, it will be open source, so we can just download it, run it locally. It does not have many dependencies. And this is how we do that in Castle. This is how I've been doing that for many years now. That I would be checking every single release of every single gem. And I know that sounds crazy, but with tools like that, it's actually really fast. And the only thing that I also needed would be an indicator that wouldn't bump my gems, but would just tell me, hey, one of your dependencies is outdated. You can take a look. You can click here, and it will be redirected to the diffing tool. Check it out, and then you can bump it safely. So I built this. And this is also going to be open source. I just need to clean it up a bit. It's soon to be open Dockerized platform for doing all of that and many more other things. So we can just run a Docker container that will just check the gem file and provide all of the info on the UI. And you can check how it works, because I use it for Karavka. So if you're interested, you can just go to this website and Karavka and just click around. But more or less, it looks like that. So it pinpoints us that we have abandoned gems, that we have many other problems. It runs bundler audit, typo squatting detection, outdated gems detection, all the things that we need to do before we actually decide to upgrade a gem are there. So to sum up, 30 minutes exactly. This is just a tip of an iceberg, because you can implement a different approach to protecting yourself. You can use things like sflow or Cilium to build up like API-aware security. It wouldn't protect you from, it wouldn't protect you from actually running the gems, installing the gems, but it would protect you from the case where your data is leaking out. So it would be able to detect that, hey, your Ruby application is trying to send some weird requests into a domain or to IP that you didn't whitelist. It seems like it shouldn't happen. So you can take this approach as well for security. But overall, it's way better not to let anyone in. Don't trust anyone. Don't use too many Ruby gems. Like, try to keep it low as much as you can. Always track changes. I know it's painful. I hope that now it will be a bit less painful, because there is a tool so you can just provide a name, or if you use Koditsu, you can just click a link and it will redirect you and generate a diff for you of version that you're using and version that you're supposed to bump to. Be aware of what's going on around Ruby gems. Try to be up to date with all of the things. If you're a maintainer or owner of a gem, please use the 2FA for both UI and API, just to be sure. And if by any chance you're running a CI, please make isolated stages. So please have a stage where you build, for example, a Docker image, or you gem install, where you don't have any environment variables that if they would leak, it would harm your system. And only then run specs, do all of other things. It's not the best, but at least it helps if you compare that to having everything in a single CI script. If you're interested, the presentation is online. I will put all of the code samples online as well. You can play with them. Again, please don't put them on GitHub, on Ruby gems. Please use this tool, basically. Or just fork it, or set up your own setup. It's super simple, but it does the job. And it lists exactly the differences in between gem versions on Ruby gems, from Ruby gems. So as long as you review code that way instead of GitHub, you get 100% sure that your bundler downloads exactly the sources you saw. Oh, that's the end. I don't know why the end is not being displayed, but yeah. That's all. Probably I broke something with the last slide. Let's say here's the end. Any questions? Yeah, probably. And I don't know why there is.
I think there are like some type of gems that have to like stay unupdated. Like the one example you showed on like abandoned gems were like Ruby HMAC. Like those like specific algorithms shouldn't be updated when it works properly. So. What do you think is the right process to like keep gems unabandoned or like updated?
Well, in the tool that I will be open sourcing, you can just whitelist them.
Yeah.
So that's part of the manual work. If you want to take over a gem, you need to figure out whether a gem is unmaintained or maintained but does not need any updates.
Yeah.
And for most of the gems that are closer with features to people, than to like Ruby certain things and stuff. Yeah. Unmaintained usually means like a couple years of no GitHub changes and no indication that nothing is needed. Or a message like, I don't want this library, please take it over.
Okay. So it's a matter of how the maintainer works with the gem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's part of, social engineering.
Oh yeah, okay.
You need to make friends with them, and
Yeah.
then at some point he's probably traveling, so he will give you the permissions to
Oh yeah,
push.
okay, got it, thank you.
And it happened, just for the record. And what actually worries me is that we don't know whether things like that are already there on Ruby gems. I know my things are. I'll yank them, but it is a bit scary.
So you said that the diffs of your tool, does it compare by the GitHub?
No
No?
way.
Oh, so it
no,
downloads
if physically downloads
Okay.
the version of the gem you're using, it downloads from Ruby gems the gem version that you're supposed to update. It unpacks all of that, and it creates a direct diff from Ruby gems versions. So when you review that with the tool, with the diffing tool, you actually see exactly the insights of the gems. And let me get back to the slide, because you can see that even by looking here, that it also diffs the hashes for the checksums, because they also change, right? So whatever is in the Ruby gem, it will be compared with the new release. So all of the files, not only the code, but also any other files that are there, will be visible. And it makes life much easier. If you see unexpected thousands of lines of encrypted things, that probably it's something bad. Ruby is problematic because it's dynamic. So sometimes you can use tricks like send, combine it with many other things. But quite often it goes down to base 64 encoding, eval, send, cookies, and things like that. The dynamic things aren't supposed to be in majority of the gems. You wouldn't expect Bootstrap Sass to patch rack send, right? You wouldn't expect any other library to monkey patch application controller or whatever just to do their job, and except of all of the extensions for Active Record. But that's something different. So
I had a follow-up. So by isolating my CI, I might be able to protect myself from the installation time part. But on runtime, I could still be vulnerable if I don't review
yes,
the gem.
absolutely.
Okay.
If you protect your CI, doesn't mean you won't bundle install. And the problem is with a bigger organization, when someone bumps a library and you just you try to run Rails or whatever, and then it's like, oh, you don't have dependencies, and automatically you're just used to running bundle install because someone updated something. So we have a policy in a company that at least 2 people need to review every single gem change directly from Ruby gems, and only then we can bump dependency on an application. That also means we have a bit more non-automated work. We cannot use tools like Dependabot or anything like that, because it would trigger CI build and stuff like that, because this is how it operates. But there's always some downsides to taking an effort. So you either try to stay secure from things like Bootstrap Sass, you try to automate and figure things out, just to be aware of your Ruby gems ecosystem, and you put some effort into that, or you're just, whatever. It's a simple website. Who cares?
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Yeah?
I was wondering if there's anything on rubygems.org that can be done to help
Yes.
protect these issues, protect gems from these issues, but then also like make it easier to help detect
Yes.
these kind of security issues as well in the future. Do you have any ideas on how, or if there's anything rubygems.org can help?
Yeah, actually, I've opened an issue for that. One of the things that would be really benefit for my work is being able to get data within the Ruby gems public database, because it's on the website. I could crawl it. Who's the owner of given library, and when the ownership changes, because then I could indicate that in my tools that someone needs to review it in more details. That's one of the things. The second thing that is missing, and I couldn't find it on a website as well, and I only could get it by unpacking the gem, is being able to differ in between gems with native extensions and gems without native extensions, because I could prioritize review of all of the gems that have native extensions because they are a security threat, a bigger security threat, comparing to gems that can be installed without any harm, trademark on that. So those are like things that I've come up with that would allow me to develop more tools and be able to predict some of the things. I guess there were some ideas on running the security checking tools like Breakmail or whatever on unpacked versions of gems and on each release, but I don't feel that will work because of the dynamic nature of the language. So there are so many ways to hide something that it's really complex to automate that, especially before actually installing that and running that within a bigger ecosystem, because some of the gems are just, they don't work alone, so they need to have friends to operate in a bigger ecosystem, and you're not able to do certain things that way.
Great, thank you.
Great, right on time. Thank you again.